Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Raymond Peterson.
I'm Bob Anthony.
And I'm their friend and guest, Alan Singer.
Educator, historian, Dr. Alan Singer has joined us again on this edition of Media Watch, which we are taping the Thursday, August 31st of 2023. And it'll show up on YouTube, LinkedIn, and eventually on Manhattan Neighborhood Network at some point in the month of September. Brought to you by EVT Educational Productions, Zoom, and our participating guests and co-hosts. We've been planning to do this show for quite some time, but the environment has made us decided, let's do it now. With Maui burnt and a bunch of places still burning, the climate show that we've talked about doing a while back is now here. And so we tagged the last Media Watch with the Montana decision. Alan, just quickly recap what happened in Montana and why it was significant, because that was a very positive climate change development.
Well, the court case in Montana is really a major victory for climate activists. What happened is that a group of 16 young people ranging in age from 5 to 22 sued the state of Montana. And what they and their legal representatives argued was that the Montana Constitution mandates that the state government, quote, must maintain and improve a clean and healthful environment in Montana for present and future generations, end quote. So in the court case, the youthful activists argued that by failing to regulate polluters adequately, the state was not abiding by its constitution. Now, I believe they lost the original case. However, in review, a state judge, Kathy Seeley, ruled in their favor. And what Seeley wrote was, quote, Montana's emissions and climate change have been proven to be a substantial factor in causing climate impacts to Montana's environment and harm and injury, end quote. Now, a number of things. Montana is a mining state. It's also one of the most environmentally, natural areas left in the United States. And the pollution from the mining companies is absolutely destroying the environment. The other thing, I visited Montana. And the United States, we have a national park in Montana called Glacier National Park. It's actually on the border between the United States and Canada. Part of the park is in the US and part of it's in Canada. There are no glaciers there anymore. They've melted. It's really a symbol of the environmental destruction that we are living with.
And I think the key point was when you said, Alan, that the state constitution included the phrase for future generations. And that's where the young people really made their mark, because, it's their generation that's in the balance here. Like you said, the initial judge, I guess they lost the first round, but on appeal, it was clear that this was something that would affect the future generations. And so they won their case, and pending, future litigation, I guess.
Yes, because I expect that the state of Montana is going to try to get it before a more favorable judiciary panel. Possibly might end up in the SCOTUS playbook or realm of ruling, because if everybody keeps appealing something like this, it usually ends up there anyway. And so they may end up losing there, but let's think positively. For now, they won. And that may be the only ray of hope. There's a couple of other rays of hope. Ray, you had one about the steel industry, didn't you?
Well,
Yeah, that's another positive sign. Yeah.
Unfortunately, the steel industry is changing the way that we produce steel in this country. The old method was using blast furnace coke, and you attain coke by not steaming but heating coal
Burning that stuff at high temperatures.
at extremely high temperatures. Then it goes into another process where the ore is smelted off and more carbon dioxide is released into the air. But there's a new method, and the U.S. is using it. 70% of our steel making is with electric arc furnaces. That does away with the coke. Coke is used for two reasons. It's high in carbon, so that's heated to melt out the iron ore that's in there. What was I going to say?
And then after they get that, they got to go through another burning process.
So that's two times. But the new electric process eliminates the CO2 exposure in the air. And as I say, 70% of US steel is made that way now. Other countries are rapidly trying to adapt those methods. The laggers are India and China. They just don't have the infrastructure to do this. And so and incidentally, they're among the largest producers of iron in the world. So we got a bit of a problem there. But now, interestingly enough, I find that the innovators, the people that seem to be doing, now everybody's doing a lot, but Exxon is doing an awful lot in trying to get a handle on everything from carbon containment and reutilization, storage, et cetera. And I don't know if they're doing this to clean up their act or they're really, like trying to help the world economy and life. But they seem to be the movers and shakers in this.
Is Exxon the ones working with the Brits on a different process where the byproduct is water, not CO2?
There are two scientists in Great Britain who are working on a process to use hydrogen where the byproduct instead of CO2 would be water.
Okay.
That's still in the planning experimental phases.
Okay.
That's not an implementation yet.
But the steel industry seems to be, at least in the US, full steam ahead on converting to this electric arc furnaces.
As I say, we're doing 70% with the electric arc furnaces
Fantastic.
now.
I think so. Those are a couple of bright spots.
Yeah, but Eric,
And that process uses scrap steel, right, Ray?
They use scrap steel, and scrap steel is everywhere. I mean, and you don't have to produce carbon dioxide.
Ray's point, very important though. This is a global issue, not just a US issue. And the US makes a very small fraction of the world steel production. And India and China are the biggest producers of steel. They are the biggest polluter. And China has increased its use of coal and says it will not begin to reduce it till 2030. And one of the big concerns is that will be past the tipping point of no return.
But the problem is they just don't have the infrastructure to produce these plants in a high enough capacity that would make a difference.
Let me put it this way. Now that their economy is in stagnation, they probably won't be able to come up with the infrastructure in the near term. When they could have come up with the infrastructure, they made their decision not to, because they've got all this coal, so they can burn this coal. And so they were happy to get into steel making, burning up all that coal and polluting the planet. So yeah, okay, but they've got a running buddy in your own old buddy. What's Joe Manchin had to say about? Let's not forget Joe Manchin, Bob.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Senator Joe Manchin out of what state is that, Eric? West Virginia. Yes.
Mhm.
I mean, he's been a thorn in the Democrat side for so long because he acts much more Republican than Democrat. He's funded by his family is invested in coal. He's backed by coal producers, and even when the United States got the latest energy bill passed, we were talking about this just before we went on the air. They had to make
Reduction Act, yeah.
and they had to make a big carve out just for him. I mean, they had to provide some items in that bill which did pass to satisfy him. But let me pull out a quote that he made while this was in process, and this is Joe Manchin. We're talking about reducing fossil fuel emissions and whatnot. Quote, we must stop pretending that there is only one way to combat global climate change or achieve American independence, Mr. Manchin said in a statement, etc. As the superpower of the world, it is vital that we not undermine our superpower status by removing dependable and affordable fossil fuel energy before new technologies are ready to reliably carry the load. Now, don't know what he's been looking at. We have all sorts of new technologies up and running at this moment, including solar and wind and geothermal. I mean, just all sorts of things that we can use to get this climate change reduction rolling. But he doesn't believe that. So he's one of the thorns in the progress of all of this. And as Alan was saying before we went on air, we're running out of time.
Yeah.
And he thinks we should wait.
And it's not just him, unfortunately. In the Republican Party, the mini debate, what they had, the also rans were arguing. The moderator asked, raise your hand if you believe that climate change is caused by human activity. I think there were 8 of these
Wannabes.
candidates on stage. Not one raised their hand, recognizing the extent of the problem. And the polls have been done about Republican voters, and basically the MAGA base rejects the idea of climate change as a face fact. And a lot of these people live in that southern tier that was in the heat dome, or the Midwest, which was flooded with smoke from the fires. They don't want to, they pretend they don't see it. And I find it very, very scary. And the last piece on that, the right-wing wing of the Republican Party actually issued what they call the Project 2025 report. And they want to rescind even the minimal climate action that you were talking about, Bob, if they get elected. So we're not in a good position here.
So, Alan, based on some of the background stuff that you dug up, are we positive this is just a MAGA base? Because that Pew, I don't think the Pew Research Center just deals with MAGA. They're looking for Republicans across the board. That's that quote that you came up with. 70% of Republicans argue that global warming and climate change are either a minor threat or no threat at all. That's the Republican base. That's not just MAGA, correct?
Yes, you're correct.
That's why we have a hard time trying to come to grips with this legislation in this country.
The corporate world is duplicitous. That's, Ray is right. Exxon, everybody's green. The BP's, their picture shows a flower.
Yeah,
but
right.
JP Morgan Chase provided $382 billion in financing for fossil fuel companies since 2015, including $65 billion to the top 20 companies engaged in the greatest amount of fossil fuel expansion. In 2023, the United States, because we're talking about India and China, had record-setting fossil fuel use. I mean, everybody claims they're green, and that these people are not green.
All right, I'm gonna raise an issue. I don't know if we did enough research on it, but this Inflation Reduction Act was supposed to be one of the best things to help prevent global warming, climate change, whatever. And like Bob said, they had to do a bunch of carve-outs for Joe Manchin in order to get it passed. And so folks on the left weren't happy with it. Folks in the center said, oh yeah, this is a pretty good bill because at least we did something. And the folks on the right, Republicans mainly, hated it. And because of this manifesto you just quoted, Alan, if they come to power, they're going to want to try to turn this all back. But Joe Biden's administration has done more fossil fuel enabling in his term in office than we've done in the last 8 years, or something to that effect, I believe is the quote that I read. His administration is doing more fossil fuel production now than the last 5 years or so. It's just been increasing, even though over here on the left, let's call it figuratively, on the left, they're trying to do all this climate control, climate, green, New Deal, inflation reduction, green, whatever. But over here on the right, they're pumping out more gas and more coal and more oil. What, explain that to me.
It's the power of the fossil fuel companies. It's it's the Joe Manchin quote, I think, really summed it up.
It is, because there was some of the carve-outs allowed for pipeline construction. It provided credits for I can look it up, but yeah, it allowed the expansion in certain areas of certain of the climate changing procedures, and yeah, this is we're trying to cut back on one side, but we're enabling on the other. And that's the Joe Manchin effect plus others. Can't throw it all on him, but yeah, it's not good. And look at what we just went through. Go ahead, Ray.
No, I was going to say that they're hedging their bets. There's a lot of money in fossil fuel.
Oh, they're not hedging. They want that money.
I know, but they're
they'll destroy anything about climate change if it affects their bottom line. That is the battle we're fighting. No ifs, ands, or buts. My question is, what does whoever in Biden's administration is trying to help him do this stuff, what do they need to do, and who do they need for allies? That stuff that you sent, Ray, about positive stuff, there was a thing about 10 things that you can do, just the individual person at home can do, which means ride your cars much, make your voices heard to your politicians, beat the drum, talk about it, let it be, because
stop eating meat, buy an electric car, don't use plastic, et cetera, et cetera. There are lots of things, little things that we can do.
My question, because I read the stuff and I'm saying, we could do all that, but if they still keep going and pumping out all this oil and gas and keep burning it, it doesn't matter what we as individuals do if we can't come to grips with big business.
Absolutely.
And so
more public education on what we can do individually to help.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
New York State Legislature actually has a very interesting idea that I like. There's a bill in the legislature, it's been stalled, of course, called the Climate Change Superfund Act.
This is the New York State legislature. Yes. I think I took over you.
If passed and signed into law, fossil fuel companies will be responsible for pollution impacting the New York State and its residents, and will be charged $30 billion over a 10-year period to pay for climate adaptation.
Okay.
If the companies are forced to confront the actual cost of what they're doing, then they may actually respond.
Okay.
I know in Florida, the right-wing nuts and every.
I was going to say, how are we going to get the government to enact that?
No, but meanwhile, the Farmer Insurance Company it's canceled all the new homeowner policies
in Florida
because of the floods and the hurricanes. And if the cost, if the cost becomes so great and the companies are forced to confront that, then maybe we will have some change.
Yeah,
Right.
bottom line is always the bottom line. If you can
Yeah,
hurt them in the pocketbook, you can make them react. We've learned that over the years. Yeah. Okay.
And we're taping just as Hurricane Idalia goes through Florida and Georgia. It's out into the Atlantic now as we tape, and it just took like an extra degree or so in the ocean waters for it to get more powerful. I mean, you take a degree off it, it's still a hurricane, but maybe it's not as bad. But this is the difference that climate change is making. It's making what's bad nasty, and we see the result.
So that Florida example, because I remember 3 weeks ago, give or take, the ocean temperatures off the coast of Miami, somewhere in the Florida Gulf, had reached close to 90 something degrees, the water temperature. It was like sauna temperatures.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, but your research indicates that the temperature in the ocean across the globe is rising. It's not stabilized, it's rising. And so we all know from earlier discussions on what's causing these storms to be so much more ferocious is warming ocean temperatures fuels hurricanes. It makes for bigger, stronger, more powerful storms. And so if we don't, and guess what is it? 2/3 of our planet is water, it's ocean. If we can't figure out a way to stop those temperatures from rising, not only are we going to have sea level rise because more warm water expands and water rises, more glaciers melt, water rises. If we can't come to grips with this, we're looking at a floating planet, never mind a livable planet. So, but anyway, let me.
One other piece about that. If you saw the maps of the hurricane, it was what they call a stage 1 or even a tropical storm, under 65-mile-an-hour winds. But as it came over the Gulf of Mexico, where the water was warmer, it went from basically from 65-mile-an-hour winds to 125-mile-an-hour winds, just from the warmth of the Gulf of Mexico.
Right.
And there's one other problem with the warming ocean, and this is related to what we call the tipping point. Cooler water absorbs more carbon dioxide gas. As the oceans warm, they will release the gas, and that will make the warming even worse. If you want to try an experiment at home, take 2 bottles of seltzer, put one in the refrigerator and keep the other one outside. Shake them up and you open the top. You're going to get soaked, but the warmer seltzer is going to release much more gas than the cooler seltzer. What we're looking at is the potential for the oceans to belch out more and more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere as they get warmer. And the potential is to make the earth unlivable.
Yeah, and just to keep us on schedule, we have about 4 minutes left.
Yeah, okay. We're doing gloom and doom. We started out with positivity. Is there any other positive stuff we can say?
Well, I mean, Ray said that China didn't have the infrastructure, but the U.S. has a good freight rail network. So as we shift to this arc type of steel production, we can move the scrap metal. I mean, we have the ability to get it to where it needs to go. China is good at high-speed passenger rail, but not so much freight rail.
And 88% of their steel is still produced the old method.
Yeah, okay. So that's the Bessemer process. That's a whole bunch of coal, coke, and carbon CO2 spewing into the air.
Right.
So we can change, and we can still keep the railroads running with a lot of work.
Yeah. Okay. So recapping a little bit, since we don't have that much time. We had forest fires burning in Greece, and there were like 18 bodies that popped up dead. Nobody knew who they were. They may have been migrants. On the other side of the globe in Maui, we had the most horrendous forest fire that we've had on record for the quote United States of America. The official death toll right now is like 115. That's just the official as of yesterday, the Wednesday before or today, Thursday the 31st. But what, there are about 100 plus people still missing, correct? So that means the Maui death toll is no doubt going to rise. California was burning, Canada was burning to the point where New York had what do we call it? The end of the world haze all over New York City. We woke up to the orange. Never mind.
Yeah.
So,
Right, people were saying, well, global warming, some places will be better, like Canada and Siberia. Well, apparently they're not going to be better.
I laugh when I hear people try to come up with some kind of, oh, it's not that bad, and we'll get through this like we got through everything else. Well, we didn't get through everything else. Tell the dinosaurs they'll get through this like they got right.
It's not all that bad. In another 50 years, we'll be living on Mars anyway.
Yeah, that's what they all did. We haven't even explored our own oceans, but
Elon Musk will be living
we're
on.
warming them up to the point where we won't be able to explore them. Yeah, maybe you're right. We might be living on Mars. I don't know.
Let me
But-
give
but-
an
but-
historical analogy that I think is important.
We got
Okay,
enough time
and
to fit it in?
we have about 1 minute.
Okay, very quick.
Minute time.
90% of the aquafilter of underground water in the United States is almost gone.
Right.
And
The groundwater.
They can't grow corn in Kansas. Roads are sinking. Wells on Long Island are drying up.
Okay.
Well, this has happened before. This happened to the Mayan civilization between 800 and 1200. They were living over limestone caves and they were getting the water from it, and they just thought the water would be there forever. Well, eventually the water level got so low that their civilization collapsed into intercity warfare.
Mhm.
Hopefully that's not the plan for the rest of us.
I
And
hope not, but
and
that's what's happening in Africa and the Sahel now.
with
Okay.
that as a capper, I didn't want to end on gloom and doom, but this has been Media Watch, folks. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Raymond Peterson.
I'm Bob Anthony. Catch up to us on YouTube at Media Watch EVT.
And their guest and friend Alan Singer. I'm a grandfather, and I'm very worried about the future for my grandchildren.
Hey, Alan, thanks for joining us, Dr. Singer. And folks, we'll catch you the next time.